one of the questions that came up, which is actually something that is quite commonly asked, is whether beef production uses too much land and water for the amount of food that it produces. And I'd just like to discuss this for a moment. Approximately 40% of the world's terrestrial area are grasslands, and grasslands co-evolved with grazing animals over tens of millions of years. And the grasslands depend on the presence of grazers to keep them alive, as much as pollinators or flowers depend on pollinators. Most food crops, require anywhere from 20 to 30 inches or more of rain per year. Berries and so forth require much more rain than that. Whereas a grassland can thrive if the soil is healthy on as little as 4 inches of rain per year. So there are vast areas of the world that are not arable for farming, but can grow grass, and grazing animals can turn the grass into very helpful protein for people. And when grazing is done properly, it restores the land, it restores the habitat so that all animals, the rhinoceroses, lions, giraffes, songbirds, and other species can thrive. And this is why organizations, including the Nature Conservancy, the Union of Concerned Scientists, the National Audubon Society in Australia, WWF, and others, are now working with grazing as a way to restore these lands while providing food for the people. So, so livestock absolutely has an important role to play in bringing back rivers that have dried up and restoring the habitat and so forth. So in many parts of the world, it's not really an option to grow fruits and vegetables and so forth, and grains and so on that require much more rainfall. Some of the other questions that we've had are about empowering girls and women in education. And I think that that's incredibly important. Those familiar with the book Drawdown by Paul Hawken will recognize that educating women and girls is the #1 solution for addressing climate change. Another question that came up is, can we transfer agricultural production to being inside fireproof, flood-proof buildings and so on? There are absolutely many circumstances in urban areas where indoor farming can make sense. But considering that approximately half of the world's land is used for agriculture, there's no way that something like this could be done at large scale. It would just take far too much in the way of resources, and there's no way we could put half of the world's land area inside of buildings for food production. So there are a couple of other questions, and I will ask our guests who are here if somebody would like to respond to this. How might one make best make the argument to move away from industrial commodity agriculture? And perhaps I would ask Eric to weigh in on this, since he did address this a little bit during his presentation. Eric, would you like to respond to this question?
Sure. At the time limit, it's probably 2 minutes or something.
Less than that if you can do it.
Yeah, that's great. Absolutely. And I think the purpose of this, my presentation, like I titled it, Digging Deeper, is because I think we do need to think deeper. We need to think in terms of root cause of issues, because the multiple crises that we're facing now, biodiversity loss, climate crisis, increasing inequality, they all have some similar root causes. There's an increasing accumulation of power and influence within a very small amount of corporations, and it's affecting our democracies as well. So our organization really fights for social justice, and we need to recognize that we need to unite our movements, the feminist movements, the ecologists, the environmentalists, racial injustice. We need to all fight together for a common future that's worth fighting for. And so when we're looking at food, just as I find that that's a very powerful way to approach these problems, because everyone has to eat. Every family has their own sort of family food policy of what we put on the table, what we don't. And so that's a very easy way that you can get involved. You can choose to not buy GMOs. You can choose to buy organic food. You can choose to buy a local food so that you get to know your farmer. You can choose to grow some of your food if you've got enough space to do it, and you can choose to share that. And so that's a powerful way to organize. You can share recipes with your neighbors. You can start organizing as a neighborhood. And here in Canada, we undertook a very interesting process called the People's Food Policy, which is basically, we were tired, the food movement was tired about reacting to bad policy, where a lot of the funding and the policies goes to large corporations and an agricultural system that's polluting the planet and that's making us sicker. And so instead of reacting to bad policy, we said, well, what if we imagined a food system that we wanted for Canada? What would food sovereignty look like in Canada? And so I encourage you to, and so we did. It involved, over 3,000 people from across the country. We imagined what this food system could look like, and we launched that policy idea. And now it's become a platform that a lot of the food movement across the country is using to mobilize to change policy. And so I encourage other countries to imagine their own food sovereignty policies and to really be more ambitious in terms of your goals, because time is running out.
Thank you very much, Eric. I wonder if one of our guests would like to respond to the issue of whether agroecology is compatible with capitalism. If you would raise your hand and we could bring you in. Anybody want to tackle that one? All right, Paul.
Well, I won't talk about this too much, but I believe that agroecology is in direct contrast to capitalism. I feel like as a practitioner, what I'm appreciating more and more is that through agroecology, we are harvesting nature's bounty, and we're never taking more than what nature provides to us, which is not possible in a capitalist framework where we should be taking everything we can get, which in agroecology we cannot, because there are so many other players like the microbes and the other living things that are part of the system that also need to harvest a little bit out of it in order for the system to work.
Thank you very much, Paul. And I apologize, we don't have time to get to all of the questions. I did see a note about limits to growth. And what I would like to say is that regenerative agriculture is about embracing a new paradigm. We're moving from a paradigm of scarcity based on extraction, where we're continually taking from nature, to a new paradigm of abundance, where we're giving back to nature. So with each growing season, there is more life present in the soil, more animals, more insects, more food, more water, and so forth. So in a way, as much as I greatly respect the work of the Limits of Growth authors, this really kind of turns that paradigm on its head. And I know for that reason, it can be very difficult for some to imagine the tremendous potential of this new approach.